So let me ask you a question. How many of you have even heard of this game?
Gonna show the world. Destiny is mine. Breaking of dawn is here, fulfilling of my dreams is so near. I can feel it in my heart.
I thought so. R-Racing Evolution was a game I had no idea existed until recently. As I said in a prior video, my racing side has fallen off at this point in my life, and I haven't had much of a reason to get back into it. Also, Mr. Racevic and Miss Casey introduced me to the world of Formula 1 and Need for Speed, and both of their channels mentioned this game in one of their videos. Now at first I didn't give it much thought, but then something caught my eye. Something that in a racing game I don't think should even exist. One of the characters was dressed like this. Please forgive my inner 10-year-old, but after seeing that, I knew I had to check this game out. From the information I acquired from those two videos, R-Racing Evolution was actually a spin-off of Ridge Racer. You know, that Ridge Racer?
Ridge Racer!
But you'd be forgiven for thinking I'm saying bullshit, since Ridge Racer and R-Racing Evolution are so much different from one another. For one, Ridge Racer is an arcade racing game. You drift around corners at ludicrous speeds, go to 0 to 60 in a millisecond, and generally you can get away with just turning your brain off for the most part. It's very similar to Burnout if you've ever played those games, but R expects a lot more attention from you. If you've played a racing game like Gran Turismo or Forza Motorsport, you'll recognize this game's handling model immediately. You'll need to be careful about how and when you brake, when to turn properly, when it's best to accelerate, and how to pass opponents appropriately. It's a simulation racer, and it's a huge departure compared to its prior entries. But R's got many quirks about it that make me hesitant to call it a true sim racer. Firstly, there's no damage model in this game. I failed so many turns and rammed my car into the wall, only for there to be nothing of consequence. There isn't any punishment for screwing up in this game, not even trading paint and rear-ending opponents causes an issue, other than your pit crew getting frustrated with you. Then there's the AI. The AI in this game seems to just follow a set path throughout the race. They don't fight each other, they just drive in a straight line, make a caterpillar, and rarely make mistakes, graciously letting you pass and overtake them. Which also ties into another main mechanic of this game, what I like to call the tension meter. This meter that drivers have over their cars fills up when you get close to them. Fill it up completely, which doesn't take much effort, just drive behind them and you'll fill it up quickly, and at some point, they'll spin out. Let me just say, fuck this mechanic. This is a sim racer. Drivers in real life wouldn't do this, especially experienced drivers like the ones you're supposedly up against. Including Gina, but I'll get to her in a minute. Namco wanted you to believe that these drivers couldn't have a damn rookie in their bumper view for more than 5 seconds before spinning out. Simulation racers are supposed to be realistic. This isn't. Not by a long shot. The handling model isn't very good either. It's very understeery and prone to causing spinouts multiple times in a race. Granted, this issue could be resolved if I just got better at driving, but I'm rusty, okay? Besides, even simulation racing fanatics will probably agree that understeery cars are a recipe for disaster, since sometimes you cannot turn fast enough with a crappy handling model to stay on the asphalt, making you spin out and lose your position. Braking doesn't help, since slamming on the brakes will aid in your spins. The handling model will be your worst enemy during the rally events, and I don't know why they added them in this game. Rally events, at least in this game, are painful to sit through. They're not hard, oh no, but they are frustrating to drive through since the handling model was clearly not balanced for driving in off-road areas. Maybe that's the point, but I recall Rally Sport Challenge having a far better handling model than these events. And by the time you've gotten used to the tracks, which I didn't, you're back to standard racing again. Then there's the camera, which is so far up the car's own ass that it becomes frustrating to use. I ended up switching to the bumper cam even though it caused me not to see my own car while driving. Not that it was a huge issue or anything, but it was just something of note. The last point of contention when it comes to the gameplay are the tracks. There's only a handful, no more than 10, which wouldn't be bad except that in the main story mode you'll do retreads of the same tracks multiple times. Recall the Suzuka circuit being used about 4 to 5 times, possibly more. I don't mind this track, it's a fine one, but switch it up. Then there's the extras. Most of the game's extra cars are locked behind a progression system, mainly through these RP points, which I'm assuming means racing points. Getting the best and nicest looking cars requires you to grind these RP points, which means you've got to play a lot of this game. With the issues I just listed, you'd be better off sticking with the story mode and... Man, this story mode is just nothing. You play as Reina, or Rena, depending on who's talking to her at that point in time. We begin at Reina's job, working as an ambulance driver, who saves the life of an unknown race car driver through her ability to drive through traffic and taking off-road shortcuts. Okay, shouldn't, people move out of the way if there's an ambulance driver driving? After saving the driver's life, Stefan, a sort of mentor/manager, offers Reina a job to join GBI, a group of people who are secretly responsible for match fixing, paying off other teams so theirs can win. Reina doesn't know this for a while. She realizes it once she's forced to finish second place on purpose. But other than a single shower scene, which was clearly put in for some fan service, that's all of Reina's thoughts on GBI that we hear throughout the game. But regardless, after being told to drive in a circle for 3 laps, and being put through rally training, that somehow allows and gives her the ability to drive through closed city circuits and professional race car tracks against other professional drivers. Sure, okay, I've certainly seen weirder inciting incidents. Early on in the story, Reina is approached by Gina, the only other female character in this game. She starts a rivalry with Reina due to Gina not liking GBI for fair reasons. She's pretty upset that these people have been match fixing for a while, and Gina's not exactly happy that Reina's getting all this attention and taking all these wins. She's the new mascot for GBI, and Reina doesn't even know it. The story from here is pretty much non-existent. Reina continues to drive through city, professional, and rally circuits until she, Stefan, and a new character, Eddie, branch off from GBI to make their own team. What sucks is that this narrative could have been so much better if there was more effort put into the cutscenes and even gameplay scenarios. To any of you who played this game, remember in the last half of the story mode where Gina gets all up in Reina's grill and starts getting all huffy with her? Gina says Reina's not a real racer and then throws that racing helmet at Reina to see if she can prove her wrong. You'd think that that'd lead into a one-on-one race, right? No. We get put in a 4-part chapter that takes us driving around professional and city circuits for 6 laps each against 5 other drivers, with Gina taking the mantle of the McLaren F1 GTR, featured on the game's cover, and we steadily win her approval just by beating her multiple times. No one-on-one duel? Seriously? This girl's been at our throats the whole game, and the devs can't even be bothered to put in a 1v1 race at the Twin Ring Motegi. What the hell? I wanted there to be a 1v1. Up the stakes, make there be a challenge, have a cutscene with even more physical contact than what was shown. Maybe have Gina shove Reina, have the two about to get into a fight or something. Have Gina constantly be over the radio taunting you, even regardless if you're winning or losing the race. The stuff seems simple, and yet Namco couldn't even be bothered. And while this game boasts about having a story mode, the cutscene length is something to laugh at, since there are a grand total of 9 minutes of cutscenes in the whole game. The game itself taking a grand total of about 5 to 6 hours to beat. So your game is 5 to 6 hours long, and there is nothing memorable about it in its story mode. I might be expecting too much considering that this is a racing game, but if you're gonna even bother putting in the effort to make a story mode for a racing game, put some real effort into it. So why did I go through all that trouble to play a game that I ultimately think is a waste of your time? Well, other than the pointless TNA, there are a couple merits to this game's existence. For one, this game, despite having a non-existent narrative, was still able to stick with me when it came to its subject matter of match fixing and motorsport. It was executed poorly, but the fact that they even brought attention to it could branch off into other things like high-budgeted teams or rivalries or something else of that nature. Along with that, its graphics, admittedly, are impressive for a game released in 2003. It's not photorealistic or anything, but it's quite a nice looking game, especially if you play it on an emulator at 4K, which is what you've been seeing. And the game's soundtrack is weirdly catchy, even if it doesn't fit for a racing game with its J-pop vibes. There are a few bangers in here. Namco clearly cared about this game, because there's a small number of people out there who dearly remember R-Racing Evolution, and some who've revisited it, finding that its unique gimmicks and unique style are refreshing after all the years have passed. But considering that this game is almost 20 years old at this point, I'm sort of surprised that, with this small of a fan base, Namco hasn't tried to revitalize this series. I do want an R-Racing Evolution 2, which would improve on the narrative, handling model, and other quirks that hold this game back. But the sales and reception of R clearly say otherwise. The game was a flop when it first launched, and critical reception was mediocre. Not many people took interest in the game back then, and many less do now. Irrespective of the sales figures, I think Namco deserves another crack at this franchise, even if it will probably stay as a mostly unplayed relic of its time.
Destiny is mine, I'll show the world. Destiny is mine, I know where the road begins, and only the truth will make me win, and my dreams will make me fly and touch the sky. My heart is my open road, it takes me where